Hello and welcome to another episode of Agency Leadership Live. I'm your host, Chip Griffin, and today we're going to be talking about project management, why it's important, but why you need to make sure that you're including it in what you charge your clients. So, let's get into the show. So hopefully that music woke you up and you're all excited as we sit here in the middle of the work week on a Wednesday to talk about something that is equal parts boring and important. But that's a lot of what I talk about. I want to focus on the things that are going to help you succeed as an agency business. So, as always, if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to share it in the comments on whatever platform on which you're watching. I'll try to include them live here in the show whenever possible. If you are interested in seeing past live streams, just visit agencyleadership.tv for the full archive of all of our shows. And if you would like additional resources, I invite you to join the Agency Leadership Council. It's completely free. Just go to agencyleadership.com/join. And while you're over there, go ahead and leave a question using the Ask Chip function that I can use to answer as part of my mailbag segment on my Friday Q&A show. So with that, let's go ahead and start talking about project management. And we all know that whether we're doing individual projects for clients or working with them on monthly retainers, we have lots of project work that needs to be done. And this is true for whether you have a team of 2 or a team of 20. You need to make sure that as a manager, as a leader, you're on top of what's going on, that you're giving your input. So you need to be having internal meetings. So when I talk about project management, I'm really talking about all of the internal meetings that you're having to figure out what to do, when to do it, how to manage your resources for that particular project. And all of that goes to the ultimate success of the work that you're doing for the client. If you're not having regular status checks, if you're not having regular internal strategy meetings, you're not giving your best work to the client. So you need to have those. The problem comes because most agencies do a very poor job of accounting for this time and making sure that it's included in the price that is charged to the client. So when you're charging a client on an hourly basis, you may be uncomfortable putting a line item in there for project management, but it's absolutely essential. And I've worked with agencies before where they will charge explicitly for project management. And at first, as a client, I recoil at the notion because you're like, well, you just need to figure things out for yourself. But as an agency owner, as someone who's been there, as someone who does work for clients, I know just how critical that is. And I know how important it is to include it in your time. Now, whether you choose to be explicit about charging for that time with your client, that's open for debate. Because if you're charging for a client on a fixed fee basis, for example, you don't necessarily get into all of the elements. You may mention that project management is one of the things, but there's no need to directly account for it. If you're charging on an hourly basis, you don't need to have a line item for project management. You can simply include it as part of the overhead on the other project hours that you're charging. So you don't necessarily have to precipitate this discussion with the client if you don't want to. There are myriad ways that you can address it, but the critical thing is to make sure that you are tracking your time that's spent on this. So if you have a weekly meeting as the agency owner with your project leads and you spend time talking about a particular client project, you need to be accounting for that on your time tracking software. You need to know how much time you are investing and your team is investing on doing that behind the scenes work. Because there are projects that you will work on that are much easier to handle internally, that require a lot less effort for you to figure out. And if you are in a position where you're charging the same for all your work, you're going to miss that. You're going to miss the projects that are a pain to deal with internally versus the ones that just breeze through. And so accounting on a project by project, client by client basis for the work that you're doing to do the internal strategy and management will help you figure out how to price these projects better. And it helps you figure out what your true profitability is for individual projects. If you don't know what your most profitable work is, you don't know what you should sell more of. You don't know what prices you should be adjusting. And so you want to make sure that you are including that time. And projects that have a lot of moving parts are necessarily going to have more project management requirements. It doesn't necessarily always follow, though, that the projects that have the most moving parts are the ones that you bill the most for. Sometimes it may be that you only need 30 minutes of work from one team member and 30 minutes from another and those sorts of things. So your total billing to the client may not be that much. But the overhead of making all of those trains run on time, making sure all those circuits are connected, that requires a lot more effort from your project managers. Some work will require more time from you as an agency owner or other senior people within your small agency. You need to be sure that you're accounting for that at the right rate. Because if you're spending more time helping out on project management for a certain client, that means that the total cost is going up because your salary, presumably, is higher than some of the more junior people who are doing the day-to-day work. So you need to factor that in because an hour of your time may be worth 5 hours of their time. So while you may say it's only an hour, right? And it's only is one of my least favorite things to hear when I'm talking with an agency owner about expenses. It's only. I only spent an extra hour on this or on that. We only lost a little bit of profitability on that one account. All of these things add up. It all matters. And so you need to be thinking about this. When you're putting together a budget for a client or a project, you need to be factoring in the amount of time that you think it's going to take for all of those internal meetings to make sure that that's factored in. So if you say, we're going to spend 10 hours a month servicing this client, but you spend another 2 hours on project management, all of a sudden you spent 20% more time. That doesn't sound, 2 hours doesn't sound like a lot on its own. But if it's a 10-hour a month project and you're spending 2 hours on project management, on the strategy, on making the trains run on time, that's 20% increase in your actual expenses. Where does that come from? It comes from your profits. You need to have strong profits in order to be a growing, thriving agency. And the only way you can do that is if you're accurately accounting for it. Now, you may be tempted to say, I don't need to charge for project management because I'll just reduce the amount of time we spend on internal meetings. We have too many internal meetings anyway. The solution isn't to charge for it, the solution is to cut back on it. The truth is it's probably a little bit of both. You probably are having too many internal meetings, or at least ones that are not well focused enough. You probably are not charging enough to your client for your project management work. If you solve both of those, imagine what you can do for your profit margins. Imagine what you can do with that additional profit to grow your agency, to invest in business development, to invest in improving your team so you can produce even better results for your clients because they'll be better trained. They'll have more knowledge. All of these things flow from getting the project budgets correct, getting the pricing correct, and it all circles back to those internal meetings that you may just write off and not pay attention to. So, very short rant today, but it's something that's important. It's something that I know from my work with agencies, not enough time and effort is being spent on making sure to get project management accounted for correctly, priced correctly. And if you do that, you will see a meaningful change in how your business performs and a meaningful change in how fast and effectively you can grow. So make sure you're charging for project management. And if you want to learn more about project budgeting, you can go to the Agency Leadership Council site, and we have a guide to project budgeting in there that you can use. It's got an Excel template and all that, so you can plug in all of the information that you need. You can plug in different salary levels. It does all the hard math for you. You don't have to think about it, but it will help you come up with a budget that will help you set the right pricing for your agency. And of course, on the Agency Leadership website, we have plenty of resources related to pricing, as we do in the Agency Leadership TV archive. I just did a show not too long ago where I talked about some of the different approaches to pricing and the importance of price floors. All of that goes back to the budgeting question. All of that involves making sure that you've got project management accurately accounted for. So take advantage of those resources. Be cognizant of the amount of time that you're spending on project management. bake it into the pricing that you've got. Your clients will be happier, they will be better served, and you will generate much healthier profits, which will generate the kind of bottom line that you're looking for as an agency leader. So that will bring to an end today's show. If you have other thoughts on this, feel free to share them in the comments. I'll be sure to keep an eye on them in the days ahead. If you have feedback or questions you'd like to ask me, just email me at chip@agencyleadership.com. I always look forward to hearing from you. And so with that, that will bring to a conclusion today's episode. Thanks for joining, and I'll be back here on Friday at noon Eastern Time for the weekly live Q&A show. So send me your question in advance, show up and ask me then. Either way, I look forward to talking with all of you on Friday.